What are some of the most bizarre and unexplainable disappearances that you know about? Story 1. Brazil, 2012. Aparecida do Norte, a spot known for its massive Catholic temple. An older couple was visiting as tourists, and while the husband was in line paying for some souvenirs, his wife was waiting outside. But when he came out, she was totally gone. Jump ahead, he reached out to his family, who lived in a different state. The police, the church, investigators, nobody could find a single clue about what happened to her. They looked at cameras, cars, phone calls, hotels, nothing. It was like she just poofed into thin air. The husband is still around, and their grown kids are still on the hunt for her. One of their kids even talked to some shady characters, checked out forest areas, and still found nothing. The super wild part is that there's not even a hint of where she might be. The couple's names are Delmar and Beatrice Wink. Story 3. Back in '84, a girl named Kelly Disney disappeared after a spat with her boyfriend at a party. A couple of officers were some of the last folks to see her, and they said she mentioned she was heading to a friend's place. Her family went all out searching for her, but the cops figured she was just a runaway, so the whole thing went cold. Fast forward 10 years, and someone discovers a skull in a car at a hangout spot by the reservoir where people used to chill. He thought about turning it in, but since it was Saturday, the police were closed. So what did he do? He took it home and literally cleaned it with dish soap. Turns out it was Kelly Disney's skull, and they found some signs of trauma, but it didn't lead to anything. Some locals are convinced it was her boyfriend. Others think there might have been a serial killer around since 4 more girls disappeared after Kelly. All of them vanished while out at night, and 2 of those girls were taken together. Story 4. Before I met my husband, his girlfriend at the time went missing. She told him she was going away for the weekend with a work friend, and he never saw her again. He spent a year searching for her and helping the police, but with no luck. 11 years later, and her parents are still searching for her. She wasn't the most stable of people, and my husband guessed she had just run off with another man. But the more years that have passed with no sightings of her in a country that knows where everyone is all the time makes it seem more likely that she's dead. Story 5. This is probably on a lot of people's lists, but the disappearance of Lars Matank still haunts me. I definitely think it was some sort of psychosis that caused him to panic, run, and then perhaps lose his memory. A lot of people theorize that he's a homeless drifter. Either way, I hope he's found someday. It's absolutely heartbreaking, and I can't imagine how confusing it must be for his family. Another one is Maura Murray. I've come to the conclusion that she most likely was driving drunk and decided to hide in the woods until cops cleared away from the accident site. Then she succumbed to the elements and/or wild animals. Still, the events beforehand are so bizarre. Why did she lie about a family death? Was she giving her things away due to a planned self-deletion? It keeps me up at night sometimes. Just so many unanswered questions for both of these cases. Story 6. So, check this out. David Glenn Lewis goes missing on Super Bowl Sunday, back in '93 in Amarillo, Texas. He had a homemade sandwich just chilling in the fridge, and even had his VCR all set to record the game. A few days later, his wife and daughter come back from a trip and find the place empty. His watch and wedding ring are still there, though. They end up finding his car parked at the courthouse in Amarillo. Then, 4 days later, he gets hit by a car while walking along the highway in Moxie, Washington. It took over 10 years to figure out who he was, and no one has any clue how he ended up there or what he was doing in Washington in the first place. There are some super strange details in this story. He was a lawyer and had told his wife he felt like his life was in danger. Definitely worth checking out. Story 7. The disappearance of the Mary Celeste crew in 1872, said to have completely vanished lots of people, have theorized things such as pirates kidnapped them, to the many stories of the Kraken, even alien abduction. Still, I'm pretty sure to this day, no one knows what truly happened. Check this website for the full story. I feel like the most logical explanation is that they got spooked by the alcohol and wanted the boat to air out rather than risk being there for an explosion, so they'd load up in a lifeboat and get separated. But still, there's nothing that's been found to support that. You'd think they would find something near the ship if they were following close by, but also not impossible that nothing would be found. This story has always fascinated me because it seems so easily explained, but there's all of the but what if questions that are all mostly possible. Story 8. Glenn and Bessie Hyde. So, back in the late 20s, This newlywed duo decided to take on the wild rapids of the Grand Canyon in their kayak, but then they just vanished without a trace. They found their kayak with most of their gear still in it, but after that, things went quiet. Fast forward 50 years, and a kayak guide was leading some tourists down the Colorado River and brought up the Hyde's mysterious disappearance. Then an older lady in the group jumped in saying she was Bessie and went into detail about how Glenn had been super mean, and she ended up taking him out, but later she switched her story. A couple of decades later, another woman known for rafting the Grand Canyon passed away, and her friends found the Hyde's marriage certificate in her stuff, sparking rumors that this late guide might have actually been Bessie living under a different name. Even with all these theories floating around, the case is still a mystery. Oh, and there's this podcast called National Park After Dark that dives into all sorts of wild stories about deaths, disappearances, and other crazy stuff happening in national parks worldwide. You should definitely check out their episode on this case. Story 9. So, check this out. This really went down not far from where I was living. Back on September 23rd, 2012, a 9-year-old named Chloe Leverett and her 7-year-old bro, Gage Daniels, just vanished after a fire at their grandparents' place. The kids were staying with their grandparents in Bedford County, Tennessee, when it happened. After the blaze, the investigators found the remains of the grandparents, their pup, and a little bird, but the kids were nowhere to be found. Fast forward 10 years, and their mom, Cheryl Daniels, is still holding on to the hope that they might be out there somewhere, alive and kicking. Story 10. So, let's talk about the whole situation with the Beaumont kids who went missing from a beach in Australia back in 1966. 3 kids vanished at the same time, right in a crowded spot, and there was barely any solid proof about what really went down. Since this case blew up, there are all these strange twists, like possible sightings and fake ransom notes and calls popping up, and even hints that it might be linked to other kidnappings and murders. What's interesting is that this incident is seen as a major shift in how folks in Australia think about their kids. After the Beaumont kids went missing, parents got way more protective and didn't want to let their kids roam around alone, even though it wasn't the first time a kid had been taken by someone they didn't know. Story 11. Sneha Phillip. Nobody really knows if she was a 9/11 casualty, if something shady happened to her, if she took her own life, or if some folks think she just bounced to kick off a fresh start somewhere. Story 12. Bryce Laspisa. He was on his way back from college when he just disappeared. They found his car all wrecked, but he was totally missing with his phone and keys left inside. It's a really wild and heartbreaking situation. A lot of folks give his parents a hard time for not stepping in more, but they had no clue how serious things were for him at school. Story 13. In the 70s in Australia, our PM Harold Holt went swimming at the beach and was never seen again. To this day, there is no evidence of what happened. There are theories from the more likely like drowning and shark attack, but in these cases, they can normally still find remains. Then there are more extreme ones like he was kidnapped by a Chinese submarine, but we named a public pool after him. The theory with the Chinese submarine wasn't that he was kidnapped, but that he was voluntarily taken to China because he was their spy. For more details, see The Prime Minister Was a Spy by Anthony Gray. Story 14. The case of Ryan Stuka in BC, Canada. I actually lived in the same town of his until he went to BC to work. I even know his younger sister. Anyways, Ryan was at a party with friends. His friends left right before him, but knew Ryan was most likely right behind them. After they got back, Ryan never made it home. They thought maybe he crashed at the place the party was at. He didn't. They reported him missing. Since this was winter, everybody was sure that they'd at least find his body in the spring after everything melted. After a lot of searching in the spring, his body never turned up. Nothing turned up. There was seriously zero evidence of where he could have turned up. It's been 4 years since, and every February, the month he went missing, people bring it up again around town. His family still goes back every once in a while to look for him. Story 15. The mystery of my fish going MIA. Seriously, I'm not kidding. I was living at home with my folks, just us 3 and 1 little fish. I fed my fish right before heading out the door with my parents to hit up the store. When we got back, the bowl was totally empty, like no fish at all. Just water and those little toy decorations. We emptied the bowl and even checked the toys, still no fish. We looked around the desk and the floor to see if he managed to jump out. Nada. Not a single trace of my poor fish. We're still totally baffled about what happened to him. There's nobody else who could have gotten in while we were gone. No neighbors or anything that could sneak in. And definitely no other pets around. Story 16. I'm not going to name the place. And the people mentioned for privacy reasons. In 1992, one of my friend's friends disappeared out of thin air after going to a wedding party. Nearly all the citizens of the town were at that party. His family members and friends were searching everywhere for him because he was the groomsman. We lived in a rural town pretty far away from any airport or trains, and any form of transportation was pretty uncommon at these hours. Everybody in the town knows each other, and everyone knows when someone leaves or when someone enters the town since there are only two main roads to leave the town. 5 years later, the neighbor of the disappeared groomsman passed away due to a heart attack. His daughter eventually decided to sell the property. She hired a demolition company since the house itself was in a horrible condition, and the restoration costs almost as much as rebuilding a whole new house. The demolition company destroyed the upper part of the house and found an underground bunker in the basement. This bunker was not registered and was not mentioned in the construction plans of the house. They found two bodies bricked in the walls. It was the groomsman's body and an unidentifiable body. Story 17. Before I met my hubby, his girlfriend at the time just vanished. She told him she was headed off for the weekend with a work buddy, and he never saw her again. He spent a whole year trying to find her and teaming up with the cops, but nothing came of it. Fast forward 11 years, and her folks are still on the hunt for her. She wasn't exactly the most stable person, and my husband figured she might have just taken off with another dude. But with all this time passing and no sign of her in a place where people usually know what's up, it starts to seem more likely that she's gone for good. Story 18. The disappearance and murder of April Jones. From a small town I grew up in, and everyone knew everyone. She went missing one night playing with her friends, and the whole town held a search party for her for weeks. It was later found out that a family friend had killed her, and he got arrested. Her body remains unknown as to where it is, but the police found blood in the guy's bath and behind the fireplace. The small amount of remains are buried just a couple graves away from my granddad's grave. The guy who did it said he was too drunk to remember what he did to her. Poor girl and family. Her mom hasn't been the same since, and the town's different now. Story 19. So, Brian Schaefer was caught on a security cam walking into a bar through the one door it has. But here's the crazy part. He was never seen leaving on camera, and to this day, no one knows where he went. Story 20. Lord Lucan. To give him his full title, John Bingham, 7th Earl of Lucan. Disappeared in 1974, following the murder of his children's nanny. A figure who resembled Lucan was seen standing over the dead body by his wife. They were separated at the time. His wife had claimed that he had been violent with her in the past, including striking her in the face with a walking cane. After the murder, with Lucan a person of interest to the police, he disappeared. There's a common belief that other members of aristocracy may have helped hide him for a while, but nothing seems to have been proven either way. At the time of his disappearance, he was heavily in debt, drank heavily, and had gambled a fortune away. He was legally declared dead in 2016, allowing his oldest son to inherit his title. Where he went still remains a mystery, and after 48 years, it's looking less and less likely that what happened to him will ever be solved. Story 21. Not the craziest story out there, but it's been about a year. Summer Wells, a 6-year-old girl, just kind of disappeared and hasn't been found since, and no one's been arrested yet. Story 22. The Busan couple that just vanished into thin air, like for real. No trace of them on any of the security cameras, despite there being tons of them around. The grocery store was left just as it was, like everything was untouched. It's as if there's no evidence at all. You can totally look it up on YouTube for the whole scoop. It's super intriguing and a bit strange, for sure. Story 23. Michael Negrete. Of all the mysterious disappearances, he clearly takes the cake. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine an explanation. It seems like Wong from the Marvel Universe opened up a portal in his room and snatched him from there to God knows where. There is also a recent completely baffling Icelandic case. I am Icelandic. John Prosser Jonsson goes to Ireland to compete in a poker tournament. Everything is going completely normal and nothing out of the ordinary. Before noon one day, after his wife has just arrived in Ireland to be with him, he says he's going to run out briefly. CCTV footage shows him walking out of the hotel and on the street for a while. He seems completely ordinary. until he walks out of view and is never seen again. Nobody has any idea what in the world happened. Self-destruction? Okay, but where is the body then? All his family also adamantly deny that he would ever have done that. He was completely happy and well-functioning according to everybody. All the links I know are in Icelandic. But if someone is interested, I can dig up English reports on this case. Story 24. Diane Carrier, Quebec City, Canada. In 1963, she was a 6-year-old little girl who just went to get her brother at the local park. She was never seen again. The place where she disappeared is really small and they search everywhere for her, but no remains were ever found. Even after all that time, her brother is still looking for her. There's a rumor that she was kidnapped by rich Americans that were in town to adopt a child. It was not unusual at that time. With her curly hair like Shirley Temple, she was a really beautiful little girl. So if you were born around 1957 and your ancestry is sketchy, maybe you should look into this. Story 25. So back in 2009, I was hanging out with family in Sinaloa, MX. One night, my uncle rolled in super late, looking like he'd seen a ghost. He just plopped down and sat there not saying a word for ages. Finally, he opened up about this wild thing that happened. He was driving on this desolate road that's usually just for truckers when he noticed a hitchhiker. He pulled over to help out, which, yeah, probably wasn't the smartest move. And he was totally freaked because he couldn't figure out if it was a guy or a girl. This person was all wrapped up in a massive hoodie that hid their face. He asked if they were stuck and if they needed a lift, but they didn't say anything, just hopped in and pointed ahead. He was losing it, feeling like pure darkness was sitting next to him, but he kept driving. He tried to make some small talk, but there was zero response. He asked how far they were going, and they just kept pointing. After about half an hour, the person suddenly said to stop, and they were right in front of some sketchy old cemeteries. My uncle was searching for any houses or even church nearby, but nada. He asked if they were sure about getting out, and they said yes, then walked towards the graveyard, which honestly looked like a couple of forgotten graves. He said, out of nowhere, the person just disappeared, and he waited around thinking maybe they'd mess with him, but nope, nothing. He called the cops to see if there were any reports, but zip. It took him days to get over that eerie encounter and months before he felt chill about taking that shortcut to work, since he was teaching in a remote area. We still have no clue what that was all about, but I'll never forget how terrified he looked that night. Story 26. The Polaroid in the parking lot. So it was April 1988. Little 9-year-old Michael Henley disappears while camping with his dad in the Zuni Mountains of New Mexico. Fast forward to September that year, 19-year-old Tara Calico goes missing from her hometown of Belen, New Mexico, just while she's out biking. Then on June 15th, 1989, a woman strolls into a convenience store and spots a white van chilling in the parking lot. When she heads back out, she finds a Polaroid pic lying face down on the ground where the van was parked. In the pic, there's a teenage girl and a young boy tied up and gagged. This photo spreads like wildfire, and eventually it's confirmed that the pair are Michael Henley and Tara Calico. They eventually found Michael's remains, but Tara's case is still a mystery to this day. Forensics figured out that the boy in the photo wasn't him after all, and that he passed away from hypothermia after getting lost in the woods. The boy with Tara in the pic? Still a mystery. Story 27. The American Dyatlov Pass incident. In California in the 1970s, 5 men, all with varying learning disabilities, went to a basketball game together and were to return home early that night so they could rest for a basketball game they were playing the next day. But they never returned home. Their car was found a great distance away up a mountainous road covered in snow, nowhere near where any of the men had ever been before. The car was in working order with gas and not stuck in the snow, but the men were nowhere to be found. Search parties went out, but the weather quickly went bad and they had to call it off. In springtime, they found the body of one of the men inside a hunting cabin. He had been there for around 8 weeks before he died and had starved to death. He was also wearing the shoes of one of the other men and wrapped tightly in blankets. His body was severely decomposed. Oddly enough, he died of starvation, yet there was months' worth of emergency food right there in the cabin that was untouched. The rest of the men were not found until a while later. 2 of them were found outside in the snow miles away. Another was not found until much, much later, and he was totally skeletonized by then. The 5th man was never found, and he had severe mental issues as well as his learning difficulties. To this day, nobody has any clue why they drove anywhere near that location, why they abandoned a perfectly working car, why they didn't eat the food that was right there in the cabin, why they split up, or why any of them died the way they did. And as mentioned, the fifth man has never been found. Nobody knows if he's dead or alive. There's no trace of him anywhere. Story 28. A few years back, I accidentally dropped an entire lime in my kitchen, and I still can't find it. I'm pretty sure it rolled off into another universe or something. Story 29. So, there's this dude from my town who just vanished a few years back. I think he even had a segment on the Discovery Channel or something. The last time anyone spotted him, he was grabbing a map at the local gas station, and then poof, he was gone. His ride, keys, phone, passport, wallet, shoes, and even his blood pressure meds were all still chilling at his place. It's been nearly a decade now, and there are seriously zero clues about what happened to him. Story 30. Lauren Spear was a student at Indiana University in Bloomington, which is my hometown, and she vanished on June 3rd, 2011. Her case still hasn't been cracked.